What terrifying creature could be inside the shaking iron barrel that required two strong men to lift it onto the table? Sheriff Julie cautiously opened the lid of the barrel and asked marine biologist Goodman what kind of creature this was. Goodman was shocked when he saw it and immediately asked where they had found it. Novak, still shaken, explained that they had just pulled it out of the town's lake at the cost of 2 lives. Goodman carefully transferred the creature from the barrel into a fish tank. What appeared before them was a horrifying, monstrous fish with sharp fangs and a vicious demeanor. It looked particularly menacing. Goodman tentatively dipped his finger into the water, narrowly avoiding losing a few fingers. What was even more horrifying was that this wasn't the only one of its kind. There were at least 10,000 of these creatures in the lake. Upon hearing this, Goodman immediately panicked. He quickly retrieved a fossil from inside the house and placed it next to the fish tank for comparison. To his surprise, the fish's appearance exactly matched the pattern on the fossil. Goodman was sure this was a prehistoric piranha from 2 million years ago, the ancestor of all piranhas. These creatures always hunted in packs and were highly sensitive to the scent of blood. Once a prey animal was injured, a swarm of piranhas would rush to devour it. However, Goodman was puzzled. These should have been extinct long ago. Why were they suddenly reappearing? It turned out that just a few days ago, a minor earthquake had caused the lake seabed to crack, accidentally releasing the ancient piranhas that had been trapped in an underground lake since a volcanic eruption. A massive whirlpool formed in the center of the lake, and poor fisherman Matt was sucked into it. The hungry piranhas, desperate for food, immediately devoured Matt in an instant. Afterward, the police received a missing person report and rushed to the lake to investigate. They found Matt's wooden boat. Julie tried to pull the boat closer, but suddenly the wooden bridge collapsed and Julie fell into the water. As she struggled to swim back to shore, she was horrified to discover the mutilated body of Matt. Seconds later, Julie and Fallon worked together to drag the body back to shore, confused about what kind of creature could have caused such a gruesome death. The next day, Julie and 3 officers took a speedboat to the center of the lake to investigate. They used instruments to scan and found a huge crack caused by the earthquake. Sam and Paula quickly donned diving gear and descended into the water to explore. They soon went deep into the crack and discovered a massive underground cavern. For safety, Paula stayed at the entrance while Sam ventured further into the cave. As soon as Sam entered, he was stunned by what he saw, columns with glowing fish eggs attached to them. Confused, Sam reached out to touch them, but suddenly the light dimmed so much that Sam couldn't make out the object. In panic, he lit a flare, only to be met with a horrifying sight. It wasn't until Paula noticed that Sam's safety rope had snapped that she realized something was wrong. She quickly dove into the cave to check, only to find Sam being attacked by a swarm of the monster fish. The surrounding lake water turned crimson with blood. Panicked, Paula turned and tried to swim back, but a large group of piranhas followed her, attacking her legs with ferocity. Realizing that Sam and Paula were in danger, Novak jumped into the water to help, but it was too late. By the time Paula was pulled back onto the boat, her lower body was nothing but bones. A live piranha was brought back into the cabin with her. To uncover the species and origin of the monstrous fish, Julie took the piranhas, paid for with 2 lives, to the biologist Goodman. It was then that she learned just how terrifying these creatures were. Goodman believed that the reason the piranhas had survived to this day was likely because in times of extreme food scarcity, they ate their own kind. Though the dark environment had severely degraded their vision, their hearing and sense of smell had been massively enhanced, making them even more bloodthirsty and savage. It was hard to imagine how catastrophic it would be if such a large number of piranhas appeared in a modern-day lake. Upon hearing this, Julie immediately realized the gravity of the situation because the town was holding its annual water festival that very day. She quickly led her team to the scene, finding the area packed with countless tourists. The officers quickly began evacuating the visitors, shouting for everyone to stop the party and stay away from the water. However, the noise was so overwhelming that no one could hear their warnings. In desperation, Fallon had no choice but to fire a warning shot. What they didn't expect was that their well-meaning warnings only had the opposite effect, causing the tourists to become even more frantic. People ignored the advice and jumped into the water, cranking the music up to the maximum and continuing their reckless party. Oh. Julie, holding a megaphone, tried to convince them to stop, but the commotion had already attracted the piranhas. The first person to be attacked was a woman in the water. Soon, more piranhas swarmed in, beginning a brutal assault on the people. It was only then that the crowd realized something was wrong and frantically tried to swim back to shore. The party scene descended into chaos in an instant. The lake water turned red with blood and the air was filled with agonizing screams. Those who swam fast enough were able to save themselves, but the slower swimmers became the piranha's prey. Once a piranha locked onto a target, it only took a few seconds for the victim to be reduced to bones. Faced with this situation, the officers were helpless. They could only attempt to rescue as many people as they could, but then the stage collapsed, unable to bear the strain, falling directly into the water. In a panic, Novak quickly jumped onto a jet ski with a shotgun and began shooting the piranhas, managing to rescue several tourists. Fallon, showing incredible bravery, removed the propeller from the speedboat and used it as a makeshift chainsaw in the water, killing numerous piranhas. But with the constant influx of piranhas, even Fallon couldn't hold his ground and was quickly overwhelmed. When everything finally settled down, the party scene was a horrific sight. Tourists were dead, others were injured, and limbs and severed body parts were scattered everywhere. Julie was treating the wounded when she suddenly received a call from her son, Jake, telling her they had also been attacked by piranhas. Hearing that her 3 children were in danger, Julie was instantly filled with panic. She quickly left with Novak to rescue them. It turned out that just moments ago, Jake was out on the lake with his younger brother and sister, enjoying a ride on a yacht with a friend when they accidentally crashed into some underwater rocks. Crystal and Derek fell into the water due to the force of the impact. A swarm of piranhas immediately surrounded them, and in an instant, they devoured Crystal. One of the piranhas even emerged from her mouth. Terrified, Derek desperately swam toward the yacht. Danny, who was on the boat, grabbed an oar to help, but Derek was attacked by the piranhas. Though Danny managed to pull Derek back on board, his lower body was mangled and he bled out shortly after. What's worse is that Kelly was trapped in the kitchen as the water level continued to rise. Large numbers of piranhas swam into the kitchen. Kelly could only stand on a higher platform shouting for help to Jake outside. But one of the piranhas leapt out of the water, trying to attack her. Jake tried to open the skylight to rescue Kelly, but he quickly realized it was impossible to open. With no other options, he called his mother for help. Upon receiving the call, Julie immediately rushed over with Novak. Worrying about hitting rocks, Julie parked the boat not far away and tossed over a rope. Once Jake tied the other end, Julie climbed up the yacht using the rope. When Julie learned that there was still someone trapped in the cabin, she began thinking of a way to help. But the skylight was stuck and the only passage had been completely submerged in water. The water was filled with aggressive piranhas. With no other choice, Julie decided to first get Danny and the 2 kids to the safe boat, then figure out a way to rescue Kelly. The water was teeming with piranhas, and any mistake would result in certain death. But they made a fatal mistake, choosing to have all 4 of them climb across at the same time. Sure enough, as they climbed halfway up the rope, it was already hanging so close to the water's surface. As Danny's long hair sank into the water, she was immediately attacked by the piranhas. Panicked, Danny struggled desperately, but the piranhas jumped out of the water and tore at her back. Soon, Danny lost her strength and fell into the water where she was torn apart by the piranhas. Seeing this horror unfold, the remaining survivors rushed to climb faster. The 2 children made it safely to the boat. Just then, the handrail suddenly broke loose. Luckily, Novak reacted quickly and managed to avert disaster. Julie also managed to get back onto the boat safely. However, Kelly's situation was dire. The water had already reached her feet, and the piranhas began to stir. Kelly could only use a frying pan to defend herself. Seeing his future girlfriend in mortal danger, Jake ignored his mother's warning and didn't climb over to join her. Instead, he untied the rope and tied it around himself. Jake came up with a plan to save Kelly. He would use Derek's body to distract the piranhas. As soon as Jake tossed Derek's body into the water, the piranhas in the cabin immediately rushed toward it. Taking advantage of the moment when the piranhas were feeding, Jake quietly entered the water from the side and quickly submerged under the boat to reach the cabin. Once he met up with Kelly, Jake hurriedly contacted his mother through the walkie-talkie and told them to prepare the boat to pull him and Kelly out. After speaking, Jake found a flare stick, then dove into the water again to open 2 propane tanks. He planned to blow up the piranhas after they had left. With everything set, Jake radioed his mother to warn them to accelerate. After 10 seconds, he and Kelly submerged into the water. However, they didn't know that an accident had occurred outside at that very moment. The speedboat refused to start. Unaware of what was happening, Jake lit the flare stick and threw it into the cabin. Worse still, the piranhas had finished eating Derek's body and had turned back. Seeing this, Jake could only hold Kelly and wait for the worst. Just when it seemed like there was no hope, the speedboat finally started. Novak slammed the throttle, and the boat sped away. The huge explosion killed a large number of piranhas. Jake and Kelly were successfully rescued. But as they celebrated their narrow escape, Julie received a call from Goodman, who informed her that the piranhas that attacked them, capable of devouring an adult in an instant, were actually just a group of immature juveniles. At this point, Novak looked at Julie completely puzzled and asked, "The babies, where are the parents?" 2 girls were chatting by the lake when suddenly, out of nowhere, a piranha appeared in the water. Realizing the danger, Maddie and Shelby quickly got up to leave, but the fierce piranhas started slamming into the wooden planks, causing Shelby, who was walking behind, to lose her balance and fall into the lake. The commotion immediately attracted a swarm of piranhas. In a critical moment, Maddie acted swiftly and rescued Shelby, who safely returned to the wooden plank. However,